Chapter 37. No one point of view. Days passed by, and Noah was still trapped in the Zoldian terrain. But, unlike what his parents and everyone else in the light terrain believes to be, his life was rather pleasant. During his stay here, he understood many things about the little girl. He knew that this girl was the only daughter and next heir to the king of Zoldian terrain. She was considered the blessing and purity of her terrain. She has no power, though. Once, when Noah asked her, she shook her head.
Daddy said I don't have powers,
She said sadly. She was always kind to Noah. She treats him good and takes care of him. When Noah woke up after a whole day, he noticed the rough ground was now soft and smooth. His eyes slowly opened again and met with a pair of beautiful, bright gold orbs.
Wow.
Noah said as he raised his hand to touch it. A giggle filled the room as his hands came in contact with warm and smooth skin.
You're not crying anymore,
She giggled happily.
Veronica?
Noah said as she nodded and moved back. She was pale, freckled, and has short, wavy, silver hair with small bangs. Her eyes gave out a chill, as it was piercing gold with black rings. He got up and sat on the bed, but he noticed his hand was chained to the bed. But this time, the chains didn't hurt. You should be lucky my daughter took a liking to you, boy. A voice came from the corner, startling Noah.
Papa!
Veronica shouted happily as she ran to him. He smiled and picked his daughter up and kissed his cheek. Papa has some work to do. Remember what I told you, okay? He asked as she nodded. He then put his daughter down and walked out of the room, closing the door. Veronica skipped to Noah and climbed on the bed with difficulty before smiling widely at Noah.
You helped me?
Noah asked as she nods her head with a grin.
I am Papa's sweetheart. All I had to do was refuse to eat and stop talking to him. He is such a softie.
She said as Noah laughed a little.
You are very cute.
Noah said, pinching her cheek as she giggles.
I'm sorry I couldn't make him remove the chain.
She said as he shook his head.
I'm happy I'm no longer in the dark, scary room.
He said as she nodded.
Want to play with my toys?
She asked as he shook his head. Something about her makes him feel calm. She is too sweet and innocent, and it is still a mystery to Noah on his irregular heartbeat when she giggles. She was different from the others he met, both from the earth and the obsidian. She also makes him feel happy and warm. She always makes sure he is comfortable and happy. He also got to know she was sick. Her personal maid would bring her a drink after every meal. Normally, Noah would ignore it, but whatever food Veronica gets, he gets. Everything except that one drink.
Daddy said I have to drink it. I have a weak body, and I have to eat properly and drink this medicine to keep myself healthy and happy.
Veronica said to him as she took a sip of the dark pink-colored drink.
My mama died while giving birth to me. Since then, Daddy takes care of me. He loves me and tries his best to protect me from the bad guy. I have no friends, since they say I killed my mama. Daddy said I didn't, but sometimes I feel I did.
Veronica said as she started to cry. Noah immediately wrapped his hands around the petite girl and kissed her forehead.
What are you doing?
She asked, surprised.
My mummy always does that when I'm sad. She said, if destroys all sadness. Do you feel happy now?
He asked as she smiled and nodded. At first, when Veronica's request to allow the boy out the room or to eat dinner with them was straight off refused by the Dark King. But his daughter was very persistent, and he had no other choice but to oblige to it. Right now, Noah and Veronica were playing in the palace garden.
Come out, Veronica. I know you are hiding behind that tree.
Noah shouted as he spotted the green skirt of her dress behind the tree. The girl was terrible at hide-and-seeks, but still, they played the game.
Noah, want to go to the forest and collect apples?
Veronica asked as he nodded. Noah was free to go anywhere in this terrain, as long as he wears the collar which cuts off his powers. There was also a scary-looking man called Sir Wilfred who followed them around.
Daddy and I used to come and pick up the apples here, but he is so busy these days.
She frowns sadly.
I am here now.
Noah chirped happily, grabbing hold of her hand. Her frown instantly turned into a smile at Noah's loving gesture.
Do you miss your papa?
Veronica asked as he nodded.
And mommy. I miss them all.
He said, his mood suddenly turning dull.
Don't worry. I will talk to Papa. We will go visit them.
She said before leaving his hand and running to the forest. He ran after her, and they laughed and had fun chasing each other. The sun almost started to set as they happily walked back to the castle with a whole bunch of apples in their hand. Unlike in Earth, the apple here was blue. It was smaller in size, but a lot sweeter. Both of them munched their apples and walked into the palace. "I see you went to the apple garden without your papa," he said, as Veronica dropped all her apple and ran to her father.
I brought some for Papa too.
Veronica said as she kissed her father's cheek. That night, Noah woke up from his sleep on hearing a big explosion. His eyes widened as he saw a huge blast from his window. He quickly ran out of the room and made his way to Veronica.
Vero?
He called out as he entered her room. Cries and whimpers could be heard on other ends of the room.
Noah!
She cried as he ran to her. She was shivering, and her gold orbs now shining from the tears.
Don't cry, Vero. I'm here. I will protect you.
He said, trying to calm her down.
Promise?
She asked, raising her pinky to him.
Promise.
He said, as he intertwined his pinky with hers. But that promise didn't last long when the door was slammed open. The scary guard pulled Noah to his feet. He pulled out the chain and clasped bound Noah by his arms. He whimpered as the chains sting his arm.
What are you doing? Where are you taking him?
Veronica cried as the guard started to drag Noah out. "Princess, your father has ordered you to stay here. Noah will be coming with me," the guard said, before walking out with Noah and locking her in the room. Chapter 38. No One Point of View. Alistair fought through the sea of dark wizards to reach the castle. He sees nothing and spares nothing, not until his child is safe and sound in his arm. It has been a week, and he has finally located the terrain. His plan was perfect. Find his son, make sure he is safe before destroying the land completely. He had no other choice. During his investigation, he found out something shocking and out of order. The land owns no power stone. Either the stone was destroyed, or it never existed. A power stone is considered the stability of a terrain. I have never heard of a land without a power stone. Maybe that is why the Dark King wants to steal ours. When he reached the entrance of the castle, he met with none other than Xavier, the king of the Zoldian terrain. "Where is my son?" Alistair growled as the other king smirks. "Bring him in," Xavier shouted as the guard beside him bowed his head and disappeared. A few moments later, he came back dragging a small, crying boy. "Noah!" the father shouted. Noah's head snaps to the sound of his father.
Daddy!
He shouted, happy to finally see his father. Alistair felt his whole world crumble down. Her son was bruised in his head, and his hands were in chains coated with casein. "Release my child, Xavier," Alistair growled at the Dark King. "Give me Obsidian's Power Stone, and the child is free," Xavier said, smirking. "Attack!" Alistair shouted, as the soldiers of the Obsidian charged at the Zoldian soldiers. Alistair released his powers, and his eyes shined blue. He raised his arm in the air and conjured his power as he ran to the Dark King. Xavier didn't waste his time as well. He conjured his powers. His black eyes turned to silver, and gold orbs filled his hands. Alistair threw his ball of magic at Xavier, but he dodged quickly. He disappeared into thin air before reappearing behind the White King. He threw his power at Alistair and sent him flying to the ground. "You're weak," Xavier said as Alistair stood up. He once again attacked the Dark Wizard, this time successfully knocking the man to the ground. "You were saying?" Alistair smirked as the other cursed. As the two continued to fight, no one noticed Noah going back into the palace. He walked through the corridor he was now familiar with. The halls were empty, as everyone in the palace was outside in war. Once he reached her room, he didn't even waste a second as he barged in.
Pharaoh!
Noah called out. Silence.
Pharaoh!
He called again, but still no answer.
Noah!
A voice suddenly arose as his eyes widened. He turned around to see his mother by the door. She was crying as she ran to her son.
Noah!
She cried again and again, kissing all over the child's face.
Bobby!
He cried as he hugged his mother.
Let's get out of here.
Ariana said, lifting her child.
No, Mommy. We need to find her.
Noah cried as he started to struggle in his mother's arms.
Find who?
The mother asked, confused.
Veronica!
He said, as tears flowed down his eyes. Ariana looked around, conflicted about what to do. Alistair has specially told her to fetch his son and get out of the terrain. It won't be long until the Zoldian terrain explodes and cease its existence.
All right, let's go and find this girl.
Ariana said as the young boy nodded and ran out the room.
Veronica!
The boy shouted as he ran through each floor of the castle. Ariana was close behind, fighting off any enemy that comes in front of her sight. She still has a hard time controlling her power, but she can now manage to shoot waves of energy, enough to knock off an enemy.
Noah, we have been searching for her for so long. We have to get out. Your daddy will be very angry.
She said, but the boy ignored her. She sighed and grabbed the boy. She had no choice but to force him out of the castle. She took out the magic necklace Alistair gave her. It was to teleport her to wherever she wants. Ignoring her child's struggle, she closed her eyes and pictured Alistair. For a moment, she felt light-weighted as the light around her intensified. When her feet touched the ground, she saw Alistair in front of her. He had a sword on his arm, and it was pointed to the unconscious Dark King. A small child lay in the hands of the Dark King, and she was crying and begging.
Veronica!
Noah suddenly shouted before running to his father.
Daddy, don't hurt her!
He cried as he pulled his father by his shirt. Noah! His father cried, seeing his son. He scooped the child into his arm and hugged him tightly. You're all right, he said, kissing the child's forehead. He then rose to the air, grabbing the attention of everyone in the land. I have defeated your king. Zoldian terrain will now cease its existence. The land will be now my terrain. Those who are willing can stay. Others who defy my control will forever be called rogue, Alistair announced. Your king will undergo the Obsidian trial, where his punishment will be decided, Alistair said before he motioned the guards to take the king's unconscious body.
Papa!
Veronica screamed as the guards tried to pull her away. Noah suddenly growled and escaped from his father's grasp. Everyone was shocked as Noah used his powers and threw the guards away from his friend.
No one hurts her!
Noah said as he stood protectively in front of the crying girl. Noah, what are you doing? Alistair shouted as he glared at his son.
Daddy, I promised I'd protect her. Mommy said I should never break my promises.
Noah said. Noah, listen to me, son. She is the daughter of the man who kidnapped you, tortured you, Alistair said as he shook his head.
He didn't torture me. I was allowed to go free as long as I make Veronica happy.
Noah said as Alistair looked at him, confused and shocked.
Noah,
His mother started to talk, but for the first time in his life, he stopped her from speaking furthermore.
Mommy, I won't listen to anything you have to say. I promised I will protect her, and I will protect her.
He said, determinedly. Fine. For now, take her to the terrain with us. We will decide on matters during the judgment, Alistair said, surrendering to his stubborn son.